The Outermost House, A Year of Life on the Great Beach of Cape Cod by Henry Beston. Chapter 7, An Inland Stroll in Spring. Section 3. Some 5 years ago, on a night in early April, I happened to be aboard a United States naval vessel bound coastwise from the southern drill grounds to New York. Our course lay well out of sight of land. The night was spring-like, still and mild, the stars thick sown in a faintly hazy sky. I remember that we saw the lights of a few ships standing in to Philadelphia. Once these had dimmed and disappeared behind, the sea was entirely our own, a vast, lonely, still and starlit sea. Just after 1 o'clock, I saw ahead of us on the sea a field, a shimmer of pale light, formless as the reflection of a cloud and mysteriously troubled by auroral undulations. We had overtaken a migration of fish moving north along the coast with the advance of spring. The skirts of the sun's robe, trailing over ocean, stir the deep, and its mysterious peoples move north on the fringes of the light. I do not know what species of fish I chanced that night to see, for there is a definite and populous area of marine life lying between Hatteras and Cape Cod. They may possibly have been herring. As our vessel neared the living shoal, it seemed to move as one thing. There coursed through it a new vibration, and it turned east, grew vague, and vanished completely in the night. Every spring, even such a fish migration, moving through ocean as mysteriously as the force of a wave, breaks against our South New England shore. In colonial times, the younger Winthrop wrote of it, telling of the coming up of a fish called aloofs into the rivers. Where the ground is bad or worn out, the Indians used to put 2 or 3 of the aforementioned fishes under or adjacent each corn hill. The English have learned like husbandry, where those aloofs come up in great plenty. This aloofs of the colonists, better known as the alewife, and often and incorrectly called a herring, is really not a herring at all, but a related fish. It is distinguishable from the true sea herring by its greater depth of body and by the serrations on the midline of its belly, which are stronger and sharper than those of the true herring, so sharp, indeed, that the fish is sometimes called a sore belly. In April, they leave the sea and run up our brooks to spawn in freshwater ponds. There is a famous brook in Weymouth, Massachusetts, which I try to visit every year. I remember the last warm April day. The herring brook, it is scarce more than 10 or 12 feet wide and hardly more than a foot deep, was flowing freely, its clear brownish waters rippling almost noiselessly in the morning light. The fish were in, moving up the brook as thickly massed as a battalion along a narrow road. There were no ranks, only an onward swarming. So numerous were the fish, and so regimented, that I stopped at the water's edge and easily caught 2 or 3 with my bare hand. Through the brownish stream, the eye looked down to numberless long backs of a subdued dark lavender gray, and to a fleet of dorsal fins breaking water. The brook smelt of fish. Here and there were dead ones, aground on the edges of the stream or held by the current against a rock. Dead things lying on their sides, with opaque, slime-coated eyes, and rock bruises on their sides. Raw spots of fish, blood red in a side of brown and golden scales. Sometimes the advance seemed stilled till the studying eye perceived the constant individual advance. 100,000 had come. These alewives of Weymouth come up out of the sea, and from heaven knows just where out of the sea. They run up Weymouth Brook, are stopped by a dam, are fished out in a net, dumped into barrels of water, and carted overland in a truck to Whitman's Pond. I have watched them follow currents in the pond, once they have been spilled out into it. Then comes, perhaps, a sense of arrival and intended time. Each female lays from 60,000 to 100,000 glutinous eggs. These drop to the bottom, drift along the mud, and ooze and attach themselves as chance directs. The spawning females and the males then go over the dam and back to sea. The herring born in the pond follow them 10 months or a year later, and then comes another spring and a great mystery. Somewhere in the depths of ocean, each Weymouth-born fish remembers Whitman's Pond, and comes to it through the directionless league of the sea. What stirs in each cold brain? What call quivers as the new sun strikes down into the river of ocean? How do the creatures find their way? Birds have landscapes and rivers and headlands of the coast. The fish have what? But presently the fish are in at Weymouth, breasting the brook's spring overflow to the ancestral pond. Some remember Whitman's Pond. Others remember the ponds of the Cape. There are herring ponds and herring brooks on the map of East Ham. The road to the bay leads off at the town hall, passing an old windmill, which still has its grinding machinery in place. I entered it once, long ago, to see the dusty chutes, the empty bins, and the stones and their cheese-box cases of ancient and mellow wood. Locust trees enclose it, and song sparrows perch on the arms that have not turned for years. I heard one as I trod the dusty floor, his mating song entering through a broken pane. Beyond the mill, the road passes a scatter of houses, crosses the railroad track, winds between the ponds of Eastham, and then comes to an open mile of sandy fields and pitch pine country extending to the bay. The road descends, for the bay rim of the outer cape is lower than the ocean wall. North of the road, it is but a bank at the end of fields. Accustomed to the roar of the ocean beach and to the salt wind in my ears, the quiet of the bay fell strangely about me. There was no surf, scarce a lake-like ripple. Masses of weed, shaped in long undulations by water waves, lay heavy on the beach. 40 miles across, earth blue beyond blue water, and mounded and separate as so many isles appear the highlands of Weymouth, Plymouth Woods, and Sagamore. A few ducks were feeding more than a mile offshore, and as I watched, a solitary drake rose from the broad marshes to my right and flew off to join them. The quiet of the bay, the subdued easterly blowing across the fields, the belt of winter weed, the glint and the warmth of the sun, the solitary bird. There was a sense of old times dead and of new times beginning. Recurrence, life, the turn of the sun's wheel, always the imperative, bright sun. I walk along the beach to the mouth of the Herring Brook. The stream is but a clogged gully of clean water running down to the sea through the sandy open meadows. Arriving at the shore, it spills out over the beach and trickles down to the bay. Low tides was at the trickling rills and cover them. High tides climb the beach and enter a pool which has formed at the mouth behind a dam of weed. Yesterday, the low course tide had scarce touched the edge of the barrier and had begun to ebb in an hour before my coming. Between the dam and the high tide mark of the day lay a 20-foot interval of beach traced by flat rillets seeping from the barrier. I looked into the pool. The herring had been in, for there was a dead one lying on the bottom of weed, a golden fish silted over with fine mud. Suddenly, on chancing to look bayward, I saw a small school of herring just off the mouth of the brook and scarce more than 15 feet from the motionless rim of the tide. There were perhaps 50 or 100 fish in the school. Occasional fins chopped the quiet water. Herrings of Eastham Brook, unable to enter the pond in which they were born, barred from it by a dam of nature's making. As I stood looking off to the baffled creatures, now huddled and seemingly still in deeper water, now huddled and all astir in the shallowest fringes of the tide, I began to reflect on nature's eagerness to sow life everywhere, to fill the planet with it, to crowd with it the earth, the air, and the seas. Into every empty corner, into all forgotten things and nooks, nature struggles to pour life, pouring life into the dead, life into life itself. That immense, overwhelming, relentless, burning ardency of nature for the stir of life. And all these, her creatures, even as these thwarted lives, what travail, what hunger and cold, what bruising and slow killing struggle will they not endure to accomplish the earth's purpose? And what conscious resolution of man can equal their impersonal, their congregate will to yield self-life to the will of life universal? The tide ebbed, swiftly shallowing over the flats. The herring vanished from sight like a reflection from a glass. I could not tell when they were gone or the manner of their going. Returning to the outer beach late in the afternoon, I found the ocean all a cold jade green sown with whitecaps, the wind rising, and great broken clouds flowing over from the east. And in this northern current was a new warmth.